Happy Holy Hump Day on this October 13th, everyone. I'm Pastor Robert. Welcome to this midweek time where I can share some spiritual thoughts and reflections with you. I'm here behind my desk in my church office. I think this is the first time I've recorded with this particular location. I've recorded in my church office before, but it's usually another part of the room. And so I try to make it a little bit different to keep it some variety going on there. For this week's Holy Hump Day focus, I thought it would be very important for us, since it's now been a little over a year and a half that we've been going through the pandemic, just to ask ourselves the question, how has this long global pandemic impacted my faith? And I invite us to reflect on that. I'm going to share some of my thoughts on that. I have 7 things that I thought were noteworthy. And I also want you to know that however we might answer that question today might be very different than how we would have answered that 3 months ago or over a year ago, or how we might answer it in a couple months from now. So I know there's a lot of fluctuation with this, and that's totally okay. But for me today, I jotted down these 7 things. So the first thing is, and by the way, I'm going to try to be as honest as I can. I do want you to know that, I struggle with a lot of this, and I never want to give the impression that, to be a person of faith means that, this is easy. We know that God has this. Quite the contrary. I think to be a person of faith is to be real and to, admit when you're kind of feeling like you're at the end of your energy level. And so let me first begin by saying, I think how this pandemic has been impacting my faith is how I reacted to it when it first started back in the middle of March 2020. I really had a lot of anxiety in that second half of March in 2020, because I knew we weren't able to meet physically for those couple of weeks, that second half of March. And I kept, thinking in my head over and over again, how are we going to survive this? How is any church going to survive this? And I know it's not been easy for a lot of churches. And so what I've learned about that in relation to my faith, and also as a pastor, is that don't just try to look at, at the very end of this, because you don't know what the end of it's going to be. You only have today, and to live in the moment. And so I think what I learned was that just to take one day at a time, one decision at a time, and just to focus on the little things that you can do each day or each week or each month, and not get ahead of yourself. So I think that's the first thing that comes to my mind, was how I reacted at the beginning of the pandemic. And then it took me a while to learn how my faith can give me strength as long as I look at things from maybe a longer perspective. The second thing, how it's impacted my faith, is I have discovered how amazing it is that God can help us to be adaptable to a crisis that you're facing or a challenge you're facing in your life, particularly like this global pandemic. And so, I've learned to edit movies, edit videos like the one that we're doing today, kind of dress it up and all of that. I've learned some technology skills. Still far away from where I would want to be, but there's just new things that we've learned to do, that I've learned to do, and without a crisis like this, I would not have left my comfort zone to explore some of these things. And so it is amazing how God can give us the ability to adapt to certain changes in our lives. The third thing is the importance of mental and emotional health. I've always been a proponent of mental and emotional health. I've never discounted that. But I know in my own experience over these several months with the pandemic that, there just have been some days that have been difficult. And, by and large, I feel like I've been able to remain pretty much stable through this. But I do recognize that it's different for all of us. And I respect that, and I, care about that. So I just think it's important for us to realize how much our emotional and our mental well-being is connected to our faith. And that has been reinforced during this pandemic. The fourth thing is that I've how it's impacted my faith is to realize some things don't need to be sacrificed. Like, there is a lot that we've had to give up, but some things that we didn't need to give up is, for example, like my daily devotional time with God, my daily prayer time with God. I really did try to keep that routine going. Also, just exercising, keeping that routine going. I just think there's some certain spiritual habits that we did not have to sacrifice or do not have to sacrifice. And so I realized that even during a crisis like this, how important those weekly, daily rituals are. And then I would say the fifth thing is just how waiting is truly a spiritual discipline. And that should not be a surprise to us because, in the Bible, it talks a lot about waiting. We're waiting for heaven and earth to come together and be as one by a special act of God's grace. So we're always in a waiting period as people of faith, waiting for that time when God will make all things new. The church calendar helps us with that spiritual discipline, like the season of Advent, the 4 weeks where we wait patiently for the joy of Christ's birth. Then you also have the season of Lent, 6 weeks where we await the joy of Easter and Jesus' resurrection. So this is not new to us as people of faith, but we have been reminded of that it can be challenging, but it's also part of who we are as a people of faith. And so that would be another one. And then the sixth one is a little more difficult to talk about because, to be honest with you, the way this has impacted my faith is trying to understand how some people have responded differently to the pandemic than maybe the way I have been trying to. And for example, folks that maybe have decided not to get the vaccine, and how, in my view, that can not be a loving thing to your neighbor when you could actually spread that virus by exercising, your freedom to choose. And I do understand there are exceptions of why people might not get the vaccine, but I think, I've had to pray a lot about, Lord, just help me to continue to be caring to those who agree with me or disagree with me. And I haven't always done a great job with that, to be honest with you. And I admit that. I still struggle with that. So I'm just putting that out there, being honest and sharing how this pandemic has not just impacted my faith, but revealed things about me that, I thought I was maybe more mature spiritually than I really was. So, and then the last thing is, I'm just wondering more, what the church will look like in the future. I never was really all that preoccupied with, when it was pre-pandemic, like, oh my goodness, what's the church going to look like in 2 years, But that's what I've been struggling with during this time, even more so than how we are handling the pandemic now as a church. I'm thinking, will we have the same number of people come back for in-person worship when we can turn a corner on this pandemic? What will the church look like when we get to that point? So those are things that go through my mind, and just again, inviting God, teach me to be patient, teach me to just take 1 week at a time, 1 day at a time. Okay, so I invite you to think about that important question, and just to be honest, and to find some others that you can maybe share your thoughts about this and see what their thinking is as well. I invite you to our Sunday worship. This Sunday morning, we have a 9 o'clock service in person in the chapel, as well as a 10:30 in person in our sanctuary with mask and social distancing. And we're also online with a live stream at 10:25 a.m. So that's on our church's YouTube channel. Our theme for this Sunday is God's Kingdom. And yes, you heard that right, kingdom and not kingdom. So it's based on our appointed gospel reading this Sunday, where Jesus is teaching us that God's kingdom is about kinships and about being a community of faith, and not just about being individuals and me and Jesus kind of thing, but a community together. So I invite you to join us this Sunday and continue to ask yourself that question. And remember, take care of yourself and it's okay to not be okay, and to just take it one day at a time as we go through, continue to go through this challenging time. May God's blessings be with you on this holy Hump Day.